Right, that's with that now. Next guest. Where is he?
I don't know, but he's running late, and I do hear jingle bell to come in.
Santa. Richard, thank you.
Absolutely. Well,
Great to be here for our Christmas episode, and love to know where you prefer to be, at home or Bondi Beach on Christmas Day.
well, it's a little warmer in these climes, and while I don't actually live at the North Pole, you can see it pretty much on a clear day. So,
Well, the only turkeys you'll get here are generally on the road or falling out of pubs and hotels. But this will be a nice change.
yes, it is.
Okay,
Welcome
speaking
to
of
Digital.
change.
All right, look forward to it. Let's get at it.
Thank you. Right. Richard Carleton, thank you for coming. Chief Executive Officer of the Canadian Securities Exchange. Now, this is close to Christmas. What brings you, though, to Australia? It can't just be the cricket or the sand and the surf, although they're very good reasons. You must have another one.
Yes, indeed. Earlier this year, we entered into an acquisition of the National Stock Exchange of Australia, led by my good friend here, Max Cunningham. And we are in the process now of working with Max and his team to build out the technology to promote the use of the NSX as a venue for Australian companies and increasingly international companies, in particular from Canada, to access the securities market here in Australia.
Now, it's been a few months. Any regrets?
Plenty.
None whatsoever at this point, but I'm sure there's plenty of time for that. But no, we're really excited. The feedback from the local community has been tremendous. We think there is a specific need for an exchange that focuses on early stage companies, that has a rule book and a regulation function that is right-sized, that is tailored to the needs of early stage companies. And again, it's been a very successful model in Canada. We get roughly half of the companies coming into the Canadian public markets on the CSE. And we've built a business basically over the last 21 years from zero issuers to 760, 770 at this point, and growing with the boom that we're currently having in the mining industry in particular.
Well, now, Richard, we're really interested, obviously, to talk about CSE and also, I think, your perspective on Canadian and global markets. But before we get there, we'd actually like to start at the beginning and a little bit about the Richard Carleton story. Your early life, where you grew up, education. What's what was your childhood like? Where did you grow up? And tell us about your education.
Well, pretty ordinary. I was actually born in Toronto, south of Bloor Street, which is a reference that none of your viewers will get. But that makes me as downtown as you can get. And that's not many people in Toronto. It's a city like Sydney of immigrants and people that have come from elsewhere in Canada, or Sydney's case, Australia, to take advantage of the employment and educational opportunities and business opportunities in the big city. But I grew up in a town about an hour and a half outside of Toronto, a county town. My father was the local, what we called Crown Attorney, Director of Public Prosecutions, I think is the title in Australia. So around the dinner table in the evening, we heard trial strategy, cross-examine techniques. Of course, we were the ones, my brother and sister and me, who were the ones being cross-examined. And so it was, an interesting view on local society, But I had an ambition to become a lawyer, what you in Australia would refer to as a barrister. And so after undergraduate education at the University of Ottawa in a very technically related disciplines like philosophy, political science, English, and of course history, I entered a law program at the University of Toronto. That was after actually living in Europe for a year. I am fluently bilingual in French, if you give me 3 days practice at this point. But at the time, I was going to school and working in France. My father says I'm the only person that went out onto Europe for a year and came back with more money than I left with, which is a true story.
That must have pleased your father.
It did, because it paid for first-year law school, which is excellent. Law is a graduate program in Canada. So 3 years of school, a year of articling, and then a year of bar admission. So they actually award JD degrees in Canada now for the graduates of the program, which I guess makes me Dr. Carleton, to some people. It has a nice ring to it, I think, actually. But anyway, I worked in private practice in Toronto as a barrister, a lot of more on the civil side. And I still, to this day, know way, way, way too much about concrete buildings. I can actually, at this point, look at a concrete building and tell you whether it's in good health or whether it's in imminent danger of collapse.
What a great skill. You must be popular at parties.
At cocktail parties.
No wonder you're
it just absolutely slays
in
people.
the Southern Hemisphere, yes. So what the transition then into exchange markets and capital markets generally? Why aren't you still practicing law or observing concrete buildings?
Well, I think you just answered the question. The practice of law at this point, as it's evolved in North America, means that the barristers, in fact, are not on their feet very much. Instead, they're wading through reams and reams of paper at the time. Now, of course, it's all electronic, but you wouldn't believe how many pages of material get generated over the course of a construction of a large office building or apartment complex or what have you. So, it frankly wasn't actually all that interesting. I always had an interest in financial markets, notwithstanding my, of course, background with political science, history, and English. But I actually did my effectively what would be called my senior thesis, senior paper, on the establishment of the Bank of England and the impact that had on the development of public finance in England and beyond in the early 17th century. And in point of fact, when you saw the impact of the ability of the British Crown, for example, to raise capital through the issuance of bonds, it gave England a tremendous advantage in effect, the competition for global supremacy with our friends from France. And in point of fact, it also meant that the holders of those bonds, and again, there was retail. They had fractionalization of those bonds, so that the people in the street could in fact invest in what became the gilt market. And of course, it was they were traded on the curb at the outside of the exchange, and it gave actually all of those people a stake in the outcome. It was in fact very powerful for the creation of some of the democratic institutions that we recognize today. Meanwhile, in France, Louis XIV was financing his wars and construction of the Palace of Versailles and the fortifications that they were building in what's now Canada and the United States through debt, through putting the screws to the nobility and otherwise corrupting French society. And of course, within a relatively short period of time, that led to a complete collapse of the monarchy, French society, of course, tremendous bloodletting through the French Revolution, and basically gave England hegemony over the known world at the time. Very powerful. And so I was always impressed with that and fascinated by how the creation of what we would regard as a modern capital market at that point was such a powerful advantage for England historically.
Well, you must have been very pleased then when 100 or 200 or so years later, a Canadian ended up running the Bank of England, who's now gone on to other things.
He has another job these days. Yes, as Prime Minister of Canada. Yes, Mr. Carney, in fact, of course, has been dealt a very difficult hand at the moment. Obviously, Australians are also familiar with some of the challenges posed by the present leadership in the United States of America. And in Canada, where supply chains on the manufacturing side in particular have been historically integrated. So whether it's parts or vehicle assembly in the auto industry, the fabrication of aluminum and aluminum-related products and so on, effectively there has been historically no border. And of course, Mr. Trump is attempting to restore the manufacturing jobs to the United States. through a series of tariffs, which at one level kind of sort of makes sense at the 10 to 15% level, because essentially what it's attempting to do is implement a goods and services tax in the United States and solve a massive problem that the federal government has in the U.S. from the revenue side. The Republicans will obviously never implement a new tax, so they can call it a tariff. And amazingly enough, most people in the United States believe the tariff is being paid by the other country that's shipping goods to the United States, not by them. So it works. But unfortunately, the tariff is also being used to as a weapon to compel companies in some cases to close down manufacturing facilities in the foreign market and patriate those jobs to the United States. And it's really hitting hard. And as I say, Mr. Carney and his government have got a genuine challenge trying to locate other markets to protect some of these industries while they search for new markets. And I think there's going to be a lot of economic pain for the Canadian populace in the coming year or two.
Ironically, though, I've been an observer through business and multiple ski trips to Canada as well. Very curious as to why Australia and Canada, in my observation, haven't been closer. I mean, I don't think there's been a Canadian Prime Minister visit Australia for decades. We've got the same head of state, our currencies, our mining system. I think you and I have both heard from representatives of the Canadian and Australian governments that this is actually bringing them together. Do you have any observations on that?
Well, I think that's absolutely right. As both Canada and Australia look internationally for other partnerships, the old Commonwealth is a pretty easy place to look to. As you mentioned, I mean, there's we're as Winston Churchill said, we're divided by the common language that we have. It's always fun translating from Australian to Canadian English and vice versa. But yes, there as you mentioned, tremendous similarities in outlook, in culture, in approach. Both countries are tremendously entrepreneurial. And the challenge, of course, in both countries has been not starting businesses, but successfully scaling them.
Yes.
And being able to finance those businesses, which is kind of where we're hoping to fit that bill in Canada, and obviously in Australia as well with the NSX.
You talk about language. Richard asked me the other day what spruiking is, and he noted that it comes up quite a lot in the financial press here. So it's funny how there's just those little translational nuances between the countries.
I think that one is uniquely Australian.
I'm
going to have to do some work on the etymology of it, but yeah, it's a good word.
What are the other things? And you've been out here obviously for business and several times now over the course of the last few months, but what are the other similarities, differences that you've noted between Australia and Canada? Given, as you said, there are those deep connections anyway through the Commonwealth, etc. But what else have you seen that surprised you?
Well, at a very practical level, Matthew, the reason that we have been coming out here on business, when I say I'm not using the royal we, but our team from the Canadian Securities Exchange, is because our issuers have been looking to tap the Australian capital market for growth finance. And one of the big differences, which is in fact a real strength of Australia, is that your institutions, primarily the superannuation funds, but of course a whole range of other specific mandated investment funds, they still buy stocks. And the pension funds in Canada don't. They are so big that what they tend to do is acquire their Canadian equity exposure through a total return swap. So the Canadian pension funds acquire their Canadian equity exposure often through a total return swap because they are so big that whatever they do, whether it's active management, different strategies, whatever, they own the market.
Yeah,
they're it. So again, it's extremely difficult for companies, growing companies, to acquire institutional level shareholders. And of course, all that goes along with it, analyst coverage, the opportunity to do secondary raises in the event that they're contemplating an acquisition or an organic expansion of the company. The capital's not there from Canadian sources. So obviously, we're very close to the United States. We have, in many respects, an integrated capital market. So in particular areas, whether it's technology or life sciences in particular, the U.S. is looked to for capital. But in the mining space, there is really not much of a specialty mining investment capability in the United States. As we've seen recently, it's the federal government in the U.S. that's actually been intervening or taking positions directly in mining companies in Australia, Canada, and the U.S. But in Australia, you have that expertise, you have that capability, and you have that retail interest as well. So our companies were coming down here a lot. And the ones that managed to raise a significant amount of money were being told by local investors to list on an exchange here in Australia. So they had local liquidity, the ability to trade in Australian dollars, and of course, trade while it's light out instead of the middle of the night. There being no, of course, overlap between the trading hours between Canada, United States, and Australia at this point. So it's an opportunity for us, we think, to effectively follow our issuers, work with Max and his team at the NSX, and provide that listing capability to give issuers the opportunity to not just raise the capital, but provide liquidity to the local investors as well.
Ticker Talk, sponsored by the National Stock Exchange of Australia, the leading exchange for scale-ups and startups. Follow us on LinkedIn.
Did I hear or read somewhere that you're a mean ukulele player, that you've got a musical bent as well? Could you tell us a bit about that, please?
Well, not just that, but yes, my family actually seems to have the musician gene in it. And my mother is an accomplished classical French horn player. And as she has aged and had various dental issues, she actually took up the string bass in the world-renowned Peterborough Symphony Orchestra. I'm being slightly ironic there, but
well,
good honor.
You had us, yes.
So I played the trombone in public and high school, as we call it, and became a professional musician. Joined the Musicians Union. I played everything from symphony orchestras, concert bands, rock bands, jazz bands, anything where you could earn $20 or $30 for a gig. And there was everybody assumed that was what I was going to pursue as a profession, because I was reasonably good at it. But to be honest, I mean, I obviously enjoy music and love music a lot, but it wasn't really my passion. I was more drawn towards the other thing, of course, is that with few exceptions, musicians generally starve, and I should also concede or admit that I was regarded as something of a jock nerd in high school because I played most sports. I was a decent tennis player, ski racer, basketball, volleyball, like you name it, anything really going. And so I realized that the musicians mostly starved, and I was interested in perhaps a more lavish lifestyle, I guess, than music normally provides to its practitioners, unfortunately.
Nevertheless, was that the source of you returning from Europe with more cash than you left?
No, it was actually my tour guiding stint at Vimy Ridge, which is the Canadian War Memorial in the northeast of France from the First War.
Right.
And it was, in fact, a good time to be a tour guide in the region because the Falklands War had actually started, and the UK had impressed most of the Channel ferries. The Channel was only contemplated at that point, hadn't been built. So there were these giant traffic jams in Calais and Boulogne and so on. And people were looking for things to do in the area, and the Canadian War Memorial was one of them. So I was one of 3 tour guides. We were busier than heck, and we did tours of the preserved trench lines as well as the tunnel system that was excavated by the Canadian troops as they attempted to sneak up under the front lines ahead of the famous battle in April of 1917.
Well, the Australians and Canadians served alongside one another on some of the battlefields in Flanders and France.
Absolutely. Again, we don't need to sidetrack this, but certainly
this is a nice sidetrack, though.
By later in the war, certainly by the summer of 1917, the Australian and the Canadian armies were really the only two left on the Allied side that were intact. The French and the British had been absolutely devastated at Verdun and on the Somme. And so those two armies, the Australians and the Canadians, of course, were at the sharp end of the stick, as it were, on the attacks, both defending the German offensive in 1918 and then the 100 Days, which led to victory in the fall of 1918.
You said earlier that you studied history and you touched on some economic history. Is military history a particular interest as well, or
Absolutely.
modern history?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, very good.
Well, speaking of modern history, let's talk about how you got into the world of stock exchanges and that
must
bridge.
we? Must we? Let's go back to the First World War.
Well, it's actually it's really not. It's kind of one of those serendipity type moments, because the Toronto Stock Exchange had general counsel and nobody assisting him at the time, and we're talking 1988 at this point. And the organization was experiencing a sharp increase in the amount of litigation that they were dealing with, and so he looked for somebody with a litigation background to help him deal with these matters.
Particularly with concrete related matters.
Well, none of them involve
or maybe
concrete,
shoes.
but a lot of what we refer to in North America as wrongful dismissal work,
Yes.
and various commercial disputes. But in any event, so I was selected to join the legal department at the organization, and within a short period of time was assistant general counsel. But the fun part is it was a good way to learn the business, because I was working with every section of the organization, whether it was the listings regulation people, trying to figure out whether companies could get listed, stay listed. And every now and then it did get litigious to the point where we had hearings before the Securities Commission and every now and then in the courts. We were also at the time licensing computer software trading capability to the Paris Stock Exchange, Brussels, Madrid, the Spanish national market, the Bovespa, the Sao Paulo Exchange in Brazil. And so I learned the ins and outs of intellectual property licensing and computer development and maintenance agreements on an international scale. Those trips were great, obviously. And then we got out of that business and became a consumer of information technology. So again, worked with the hardware, software, telecommunications people to secure and build out basically the next generation of systems. Eventually, I moved over onto in fact, I'll tell you, when I decided that my formal legal career needed to come to an end, I was in Paris. We were negotiating the acquisition of some trading software from the Paris Exchange, I think they weren't Euronext yet, but it was coming. And I was basically pulling all-nighters for 3 to 4 days a week. So we would spend the day negotiating with our French counterparts. I would then take what we had done to our outside law firm that was assisting us in Paris. We would turn another version of the license and development agreement at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and then get a couple hours sleep before starting the negotiation again. Meanwhile, the business guys they went to the opera. They went to Maxime for dinner. They were seeing the sights of Paris. And I thought, I'm smarter than these guys. What's wrong with this picture? Why am I the one who's... So when I caught back, I spoke to the chief executive of the exchange, and he basically laughed at me because he said, I've been waiting for you to do this for a while now. And so I took over the responsibility for the market data group originally. So we were marketing not just stock market quotes and information, historical information from the Toronto Exchange, but also on behalf of our colleagues in Montreal, Alberta, Vancouver, and Winnipeg at the time internationally. And I got really interested with the market data business. It appears from the outside to be kind of boring, but we were in many respects on the cutting edge of digital transformation of the markets. So we went from analog tickers to digital dissemination of these through high-speed communication systems. And we were working through a lot of legal issues with the International Trade Association. In fact, I chaired the Global Market Data Trade Association for 2 terms in the mid and late 90s. And anyway, again, wonderful learning experience and tremendous opportunity to meet with colleagues from around the world. And so, our mutual colleague, David Raper, got to meet him and some of his predecessors at the Australian Stock Exchange. But a great group of contacts from around the world at the time. But then as I began to accumulate more and more business operations from the group, the Toronto Stock Exchange was the first organization in the world to launch an ETF back in 1993. So I was part of that effort. And then I ran the program for 4 years, from 96 to 2000. We were 7 billion Canadian under administration at the time, when we decided ultimately to outsource the program to eventually the company that's now BlackRock, and also outsource the calculation of the indices and the management of the indices to Standard & Poor's. And so that's the S&P TSX composite indices and 60 index and so on were born. And as we were finishing that project, somebody mentioned to me in New York that they were working with the Australian Stock Exchange on a very similar program here. And so I did, in fact, assist the New Yorkers in working with the ASX on concluding that arrangement. So I don't know whether I can take credit or blame or whatever, but
all of
yes,
the above.
I was.
Well, history will judge. History will judge, Richard. That's right. Now, one of the things we're trying to do here is we invite the guests, as you know, to bring in a prop, something of significance. It could be personal, professional, or something in between. So here's your chance to relive your childhood at school. What have you brought in, Richard, for show and tell? I'm hoping it's a trombone.
Well, unfortunately, or a ukulele.
Yes.
I wish we had thought of that one ahead of time, because yes, I would be pleased to play a couple of chords for
You'll
you.
be back.
But yes, no. Behind me is the Toronto Blue Jays baseball cap.
Please reach for it. Let's have a better look. Okay.
Very good.
So tell us about that, and why is that important?
Well, the Toronto Blue Jays are in the American League of Major League Baseball. It's apparently popular enough in Australia that the games are shown live on ESPN Australia, which has been very handy. And as I'm sure all of your viewers are aware, the Blue Jays won the American League Championship this year, and of course went head-to-head with the Los Angeles Dodgers in the World Series. Now, you should probably know, because again, remember, I'm a nerd jock. Everybody thinks when the Americans call, their baseball championship the World Series, that this is yet another example of, where I'm headed.
Yes.
In point of fact, they may be guilty of a lot of things, but not that on this occasion. In fact, the contest was originally sponsored by a newspaper in New York City called the New York World. And they paid money to Major League Baseball.
Right.
It was the World Series.
Right. Okay.
Now, of course, it stuck, and the New York World went out of business in the 1920s or the 30s or something like that. But so yes, it's not actually another example of what we were talking
American
about.
global domination. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's still a misnomer, though. Nevertheless, but it's always baffled me, given our shared history, Australia and Canada, that the Canadians don't play a lot of cricket, and even the French. I mean, you might say, "Oh, well, half of us was French," but the French don't play baseball. How is it that a lot of those British games the Canadians have avoided?
Do you know where Canada is, Matthew?
I do.
Geographically?
Yeah, but Australia's a long way from England.
Yes.
Yes, but it's a little warmer, and the grass grows, I think, year-round.
Yeah.
Whereas ours is covered in a thick layer of snow, even the southerly climes where Toronto finds itself.
How's that good for baseball?
It's I guess you got us there. Baseball is actually a rural game from Canada and the United States. So, in fact, baseball was being played in southern Ontario outside of Toronto in the 1830s. And, of course, it is a derivation of cricket. I'm not sure how it evolved or, went off in different directions. But again, as with rugby and American football, you can recognize, some of the, the things, right? Where the DNA is common at some point. But what I will say, Matthew, is one, my South African friend has explained to me that Canada is not crap at cricket anymore. Again, it's likely because of the significant immigration we've had from the West Indies and as well as India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. So apparently we are producing international level cricketers at this point. I would be lying if I said that it was on the front pages of the sporting news on a daily basis at this point. And as you may know, Canada every now and then surprises some folks at the World Rugby Championships as well. And in fact, Rugby Sevens is a particular strength of the Canadian side, particularly the women, who recently played England for the World Championship about a few months back, having beaten Australia and New Zealand on the way there.
Is that all we've got time for? Yeah.
Well, on that note, I must say it's a very fetching cap. As you know, my team are very fond of foreign swag. A lot of it's been corporate branded, but feel free to bring some Blue Jays caps with you next time. Before we wrap, our other tradition after props is rapid fire questions, hopefully received with rapid fire answers. What's the biggest difference between Aussie and Canadian investors?
I talked about that already. The Aussie institutions buy individual stocks.
Yep. Okay.
Canadians don't.
Okay. Easy. This is a little bit of a nod to your biggest shareholders. If you could ban one piece of financial jargon forever, what would it be?
Bottom line.
Okay. Like that. If you weren't running a stock exchange, what would you be doing and why?
Backcountry ski guide.
I like that.
Monashees, British Columbia, Canada.
Very good. You can sign me up for that as well. Matthew kept us off skiing today, unfortunately. And finally, from your perspective, are markets more comedy, drama, or tragedy?
Comedy. Take yourselves not so seriously, but take your job seriously.
I like that. That's a great way to wrap up our Christmas edition of Ticket Talk. And a special import from Toronto, Richard Carleton, Chief Executive Officer of the Canadian Securities Exchange. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Ho, ho, ho.